10's Late News with Tracey Spicer.
Heading the late news, tension underlies the truce on the waterfront amid fears of new police action in the morning. More heartbreak as tornadoes shattered cities in America try to clean up. And Van Halen celebrates 30 years with a tour down under. Good evening. First tonight, the waiting game continues on Australia's waterfront. An uneasy truce averted any real violence today, but rumours are spreading more clashes could be only hours away. And fears are deepening the Australian economy will soon feel the bite of international boycotts.
An outbreak of peace across the nation's waterfront today. In Melbourne, a deal last night between police, protesters and Patricks not to move any cargo over the weekend meant everybody got some sleep. But while the demonstrators dozed, the politicians took up the battle.
If the government gets away with what it's trying to do with the wharfies, this can happen to any other worker in Australia.
Is contracting out commonplace in the Australian economy? Yes, it is, and of course we'll continue to see it.
The opposition vowed to stop companies stripping their assets, then sacking workers.
And it will be a first-order priority of our government on election to stop that from happening.
And as for how the dispute's been going...
On the whole, the union movement has handled this quite well, and I think they ought to go on handling it that way.
I'm angered by Kim Beazley's attitude, which is really caving into the worst kind of militant trade union activity.
The industrial actions moved overseas, US unions announcing a boycott of Australian products.
What is at stake here is Australia's export and trade efforts.
While welcoming the international support, even the MUA doesn't want an American supermarket boycott on our goods.
Clearly it's something that's occurred not from my initiative because, you know, we've got a long history and the record stands up to any scrutiny of support and exemptions from industrial disputation of primary produce.
The government says it can do little.
Well, there's limited follow-up that we can do and will do.
With talk today of the dispute dragging on for months, the government is confronting a dilemma. On the one hand, now publicly acknowledging the serious risk to exports, while on the other, insisting that international retaliation is no more than empty threats.
I think the international blockade threat was dealt a pretty strong blow right at the start.
The latest opinion polls show public support roughly even for both sides. But as these Melbourne dock workers weld ripped-up railway tracks in preparation for a renewed assault, it'll likely be more polarised than ever. Paul Smith, 10 News.
In Western Australia, wharfies are preparing for more clashes after rumours police are being called in from across the state. But today, the battlefront proved a safe playground for hundreds of protesters and their children, enjoying the truce in the bitter industrial war. In fact, today's picket lines looked more like a country fair. But even as union leaders warned of a possible overnight attack, they claimed growing support from the community.
I think that they feel, as they continue to consider their position, that this is an important and telling political moment for our country. And they really feel like they're part of something worthwhile.
And a warning that we'll all feel the effects soon in shortages from supermarkets to surgeries. Business blames the MUA, which in turn insists the fault lies with Patricks and the government.
4,000 containers, $200 million worth of cargo, lying dormant at Melbourne's East Swanson dock. A scene repeated across Australia.
Clearly, if this dispute goes on for weeks, it's going to cause enormous disruption and short-term loss of jobs and employment, and that's why it's important that we get some solutions quickly.
If not, consumers will see for themselves. From orange juice drying up in the supermarket to a shortage of cars on the showroom floor. Anything from companies heavily reliant on shipping. The union blames the government's heavy-handed approach.
The big business and small business should be getting and demanding of Reith and Howard, demanding of anybody to let's sort this mess out that have been created by Patrick Stevedore.
Despite the negative impact the dispute is having on business, both the Business Council and the Employers Federation agree that companies, especially the larger ones, are prepared to tough it out for a while yet.
The CEOs of the major companies in Australia are prepared to wear a fair bit of pain this time around to see true reform on the waterfront.
But some industries can't wait. Doctors want guarantees urgent medical supplies won't be blocked.
Both sides involved in this dispute need to make sure that medications and vaccines that might be able to save people's lives get through without being hindered.
We will not hold up any containers that are of need to the community outside.
Damien Curry, 10 News.
Fury among members of Australia's hospitality industry after finding the taxman wants to put their tips on his menu. Accountants claim it will send waiters to war, a federal government move to tax hospitality workers on tips.
The whole industry would be in uproar, and many people would say this is simply unfair.
Waiters generally work hard at what they do. I don't think it's very fair how the government can take a percentage of that.
As part of its tax reform agenda, the government wants to dish up an 8% tip tax on top of regular income tax. It assumes all hospitality workers earn a certain amount of tips a year and doesn't declare them. It's part of a chase to recapture the $50 billion lost annually through tax evasion, and it's bound to leave a foul taste in many a mouth.
It basically means over 1 million people will have to pay another $30 a week, another $1,500 a year, and simply it's a very immoral situation because a lot of these people aren't earning tips at all.
The industry is concerned it will be forced down the path the American industry has taken, with customers obliged to pay tips as waiters attempt to cover the new cost.
I think that it will put pressure on people to give tips, and people don't like to do that. They sort of like to give it to you as sort of a pleasantry rather than an obligation.
Jane Calvert, 10 News. Still to come, Britain confident 2 nurses jailed for murdering an Australian colleague will be freed. And millions expected to flock to see the Shroud of Turin.
"7:30 Monday, take a behind-the-scenes tour of Movie World that's not for the faint-hearted. We find out what makes stockbroker extraordinaire Renee Rifkin tick.
I just love being around them.
And create a delicious creme caramel on Healthy, Wealthy and Wise, 7:30 Monday.
I can play you a nice little tune, but for a big sound, there's nothing like a big orchestra. Property investment is a bit like that. You can hock yourself up to the eyeballs for one little unit, or get into a spread of properties through MLC's Property Securities Fund. MLC picks the right investments so you get a regular income, without the hassles of being a landlord. Sounds good to me. If money matters, talk to MLC.
Introducing new Nestle LC1 Muesli, made with a unique mix of fruit, nuts and grains. New Nestle LC1 Muesli works wonders on the inside.
OPSM have all the names, and for 3 weeks only, we're dropping them by 30% on all frames priced over $150 whenever you buy a complete pair of glasses. But be quick, sale ends May 3rd.
What's your credit card done for you lately? Is it earning its place in your wallet or purse? Well, now there's a credit card that makes your wallet really perform. It's a MasterCard, so you can use it just about everywhere, but at participating Shell service stations, this MasterCard pays you back in Shell petrol, because it's a Shell MasterCard. And your free petrol payback is available every month. Shell MasterCard. It makes your wallet really perform. Call now or pick up an application at participating Shell service stations.
2 British nurses jailed in Saudi Arabia for murdering their Australian colleague Yvonne Guildford could soon be free. Officials say Prime Minister Tony Blair is expected to get a sympathetic hearing during his visit to Jeddah.
On his arrival in Jeddah for talks with King Fahd and the ruling family, the Prime Minister was greeted by the whole Saudi cabinet. A good omen when he was looking to sustain an export performance which saw Britain do £6 billion worth of business with the Saudis last year. At a reception for British and Saudi businessmen, Mr. Blair praised the bonds and business between the two countries, and he was hoping that friendly talks with Crown Prince Abdullah will improve the prospects for early release from a Saudi prison of 2 British nurses. Lucille McLaughlin and Deborah Parry have been in prison for 15 months after being charged with the murder of a colleague in a Dhahran hospital.
As UN arms inspectors admitted making little progress in destroying Iraq's weapons of mass destruction, President Saddam Hussein was saluting the millions who volunteered to fight off any attack. The huge parade took all day to march through Baghdad.
It was the mother of all parades, billed as a salute to Iraq's volunteer army. For 6 hours, the best of the 3 million men and women the government says it mobilized during Baghdad's recent showdown with the United States strutted their stuff. Over 100,000 ordinary Iraqis who had rehearsed and competed for the honor of taking part were put through their paces in Baghdad's Grand Celebration Square. And on the reviewing stand, President Saddam Hussein, at the first official parade he's attended since 1993. Throughout the day, the president reviewed the troops, returned salutes, and even did a walkabout to greet VIPs. He looked robust, confident, and in good spirits. That despite complaints from UN weapons inspectors that Iraq is still hiding information about its weapons of mass destruction. The Iraqi leader celebrates his 61st birthday next week, still defying American predictions that he'd be out of power shortly after the Gulf War.
After surviving the onslaught of a string of tornadoes, heavy rain is now adding to the woes of people in the American Midwest. One woman was drowned as flash floods followed the downpour, raising the storm's death toll to 12.
The streets of Nashville are still clogged by downed power poles and fallen trees. And now, to add insult to injury, rain is forecast for the next 3 days. Residents are trying to come to grips with the destruction and the slow recovery.
Everybody just looked, this was beyond, I can't believe it. It was like, this can't be real.
30,000 people are still without power and could be for another week. There's concern too about the battering historic buildings have taken.
Like a dream, bad dream come true, I guess, you know. But, just thankful that everybody's okay.
From Chile, President Clinton paid tribute to the resilience of those in the tornado's path. He praised the commitment of people to rebuild their communities.
In a few days, the stress will build, and in a few weeks, we'll have to deal with some really serious feelings. But right now, everybody is mobilized and energized.
But while 90% of property owners have insurance for tornadoes, only 10% are covered for flood damage. In the United States, Pam Mackay, 10 News.
Italy's Turin Cathedral is ready for an invasion. 3 million people are expected to swamp the city in the next 2 months. Now the Shroud of Turin is back on public display.
Crowds gathering outside Turin's San Giovanni Cathedral. For the next 2 months, this will be a place of pilgrimage for the devoted, the curious, even some of the skeptics. Today's throng is just the beginning. 30,000 people per day are expected to pass through these doors to see what for some is proof that Jesus lived and died on the cross.
I think it's one of the major events for me in my life. To see the cloth or maybe that was used to bury Jesus Christ. I mean, I just think for me to see it in person, to see it close to me, I think that's just going to be great.
Shielded behind glass in an airtight case, the ancient yellowing linen does not reveal that much to the naked eye. The image is clearer in photographic negatives, but shroud enthusiasts insist it is the burial cloth of Christ, even if the last major tests concluded that the shroud dated from the 14th century.
Coming up next in 10's Late News, the bane of many a politician hoping to join their ranks. And after decades, Van Halen celebrates Down Under.
Here, you either play music, listen to music, or move to Utah. Billy got kicked out of music school. That's kind of why we hired him. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes daylight seems out of place here, but it does let you get some sleep. There's no better place to be exactly who you are. Drop by sometime. Jack lives here.
Playing golf just got more rewarding with Citibank's new Golf Link MasterCard. Not only does it record your handicap, it earns rewards points on every purchase you make. You can exchange your points at pro shops or claim other exciting rewards like golf holidays. Citibank Golf Link MasterCard. There's no annual fee for your first year, and they'll even chip in a dozen top-flight Strata Volata tour balls free. So don't be a duffer. Call to apply now.
Indy 2000 Volume 2. It's got Marilyn Manson, 9 Inch Nails, Kylie Minogue, Nick Cave, Diana Arnade,
and if you don't believe that,
Jebediah, and The Prodigy. 42 tracks on 2 CDs, all on Indy 2000 Volume 2. Out now.
Samantha, you're not gonna believe where I'm calling from. No, not Wagga Wagga. No, Wonthaggi was last week. I'm in Kalgoorlie. Yeah, so dinner's off for tonight, but tomorrow night I found a really nice, out-of-the-way place. Oh, romantic. Oh, yeah.
Vodafone's network is so vast, it now covers 90% of the Australian population. Network Vodafone. Oh, yeah.
The Human headline is planning a career change. After years of putting politicians on the spot, Darren Hinch is now looking to join them on a Senate seat.
In Melbourne for tonight's Logie Awards, Darren Hinch is set to steal the limelight on another stage, the political one. He's formed his own party called Protect Every Australian Child, or PEACH.
Even if I lose, I can't lose because it'll raise the issue even more. It'll get more profile for the issue of child's rights and children's rights and child abuse.
The outspoken 54-year-old has been a strong critic of child molesters throughout his career, most notably when he was jailed for contempt of court for exposing the activities of a Catholic priest awaiting trial on child sex charges.
I was molested as a child. I've been to jail over an evil priest, and I figure that people will listen to me. I think they'll listen to me.
Hinch is leading a relatively quiet life on his Victorian farm after losing some high-profile jobs in radio and television.
Do you know, Bronwyn, I was thinking as we came out here, you and I, believe it or not, have one thing in common.
We do?
Mm-hmm. We're both desperately looking for a new job, a better job next year.
The only drawback of donning the political cap, he says he'll have to behave at tonight's Logie Awards. Kim Carter, 10 News.
Yeah.
Leading Australian spinal surgeons have called for immediate changes to rugby, saying both codes are inherently dangerous and urgent change is the only way to prevent more players being crippled.
I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down.
Another game of rugby league is stopped as injured players are stretchered from the ground. In this recent case, a Medibank chopper was forced to land in the middle of the field. A new study of spinal injuries by leading Australian surgeons says an average of 5 club players are admitted to hospital with spinal injuries each year. The same goes for rugby union. Doctors warn if something's not done, more players will end up quadriplegics.
Either we accept the injuries as they continue to occur, or we attack the problem by looking, in rugby union, again looking at the scrum, and in league, looking at the tackle.
The experts examined spinal cases involving players from the 2 rugby codes over 12 years from 1984. 26 rugby players suffered crippling injuries. In league, it was 23.
Spinal injuries are something we're all absolutely terrified of, and anything at all that can be done to avoid that should be done.
In many cases, players were found paralysed on the ground when packs dispersed, the victims of apparent general play. Others suffered head-high or spear tackles. It costs an estimated $5 million every time a league or union player suffers a crippling spinal injury. That's a total bill of about $245 million in New South Wales alone from 1984 to 96. Sean Fewings, 10 News.
It was third time lucky for salvage teams battling to refloat a trawler at Port Lincoln in South Australia. They finally raised the vessel today, with most of its thousands of litres of fuel intact.
The first attempt to raise the stricken Southern Star yesterday was thwarted by the incoming tide.
The vessel used as a feed boat for Port Lincoln's tuna farms had sunk at her moorings. By nightfall, the 18-metre ship was submerged. In her tanks, 7,500 litres of diesel fuel. The Metropolitan Fire Service placed floating booms around the ship, and officers worked through the night to prevent the small amount of diesel which was leaking from spreading beyond the immediate area. At daybreak, they renewed their efforts to refloat the Southern Star. Once again, the attempt was unsuccessful.
We started to raise the vessel, and then unfortunately some windows broke on the starboard side of the vessel, allowing water to come back in and the vessel settled back on the bottom again.
It was a case of third time lucky. Cables were attached to the hull and superstructure, and in the driving rain it came to the surface. There was only a minimal loss of fuel into the water, but damage to the boat is put at $200,000. The Southern Star now has been taken to a government slipway for a thorough inspection. Marine authorities have begun an investigation into the cause of the sinking. Alan Murrell, 10 News.
Western Australian Premier Richard Court is under fire yet again, this time over plans to slug motorists to fund new transport schemes.
The state opposition is on the warpath over claims that massive hikes in car registration fees will actually save car owners money.
We have in Western Australia at the moment the highest taxing government in history, the highest taxing, the biggest spending, and where's the money going?
The philosophy of the government is to make sure that we don't have a debt mentality, that today's generation pays to improve facilities so we hand over to the next generation better facilities.
Rego fees will jump by up to $100 a year. Car owners easy targets to pay for a $1.3 billion road transport plan.
It's a user pay concept, and well, very much so. I mean, it is the motorists that use the roads, and they are going to be the major beneficiaries.
But the state opposition says Richard Court's user pays policy is failing in other more important areas.
It doesn't deliver basic services such as hospital care for people who really need it. The waiting lists in our hospitals are a disgrace.
Rex Hoare, 10 News.
Even the world of heavy metal music has its veterans, and none more famous than Van Halen. After surviving the loss of 2 lead singers, the band's starting its 3rd decade with a tour of Australia.
Brothers Eddie and Alex Van Halen formed their band in 1978, becoming one of the world's top stadium rock bands. 20 years on, and charismatic frontman David Lee Roth is history. The band now up to their 3rd lead singer in Gary Cherone from Extreme. In Australia for the first time, audiences are lapping up the guitar-driven hard rock sound of the band, who are committed to giving fans a mix of old Van Halen hits and new.
Before having to learn everything, I'm going, I'll never be able to learn this. I'm getting a teleprompter, I'm getting cue cards, Mike's going to whisper in my ear during the show. But we rehearsed for about 2 months, and then it came easier than I thought.
The 3 original band members claim Cherone will be their final frontman, but not because of his voice.
So it was more of just how we all got along as regular human beings. And within 45 minutes of him first coming to the studio, we wrote the song Without You, which is the first single from the album.
And judging by the reaction in Canberra last night, Van Halen will have a dedicated audience for many years to come. Van Halen plays Sydney tomorrow night, followed by Brisbane, Adelaide and Perth. For Peter Bullock, 10 News.
And ahead in the late news, all the weather details, putting your town on the map, and Sports Tonight with Matthew White.
Thanks, Tracey. Tonight we catch up with the man who missed out on the Australian captaincy. Also, all the day's footy and motor racing action, plus Arsenal set to take out the English Soccer Championship.
Join new host Alyssa Jane Cook for the brand new season of Sex Life.
Great sex involves the mind as much as the body.
A 1-hour adults-only special on the best sex ever.
Whenever something's naughty, we immediately want to do it.
All new Sex Life returns Monday.
David Jones is pleased to announce 30% off selected quality women's, men's and children's fashion, accessories and homewares. Offer ends this weekend.
David Jones. Yeah, OK, so you're looking for the best family car tyre. Yes, well, of course, you have to consider safety. And economy's important these days. Yokohama tyres are known for their performance. Now, this tyre will probably last longer than any other tyre you've driven on before. The new S760, available now at your local dealer.
Business planning is not a choice, it's a necessity. Providing excellence in customer service is part of planning. It's good for you, the consumer, and gives businesses the leading edge. The Victorian Fair Trading Awards recognise customer service excellence and are open to all Victorian businesses. So if you have the leading edge, or you know someone who does, call the hotline number for an entry form and your free copy of the Victorian Good Business Guide.
In 1950, Chicago businessman Frank McNamara conceived a master plan that changed the way the world paid its bills. The Diners Club card is an original that's often copied. Now we're changing the way the world does business. The Diners Club business card system saves your company precious time and money. First in the world and still the last word in credit cards. Diners Club International, the blueprint for all other credit cards.
David Jones is pleased to announce 30% off selected quality women's, men's and children's fashion, accessories and homewares. Offer ends this weekend.
Now to the national weather details and the outlook for the start of a new week. Today brought showers to Cairns. It was cloudy around Townsville, showery in Brisbane, dry in Sydney with cloud around Canberra. Hobart was hazy and cool, Melbourne cloudy. It was wet in Adelaide, fine in Perth, then cloudy across the centre and the top end. The satellite shows heavy cloud over the southeast, stretching back into South Australia, while another band lies across the southwest. That's linked to a cold front coming off the Indian Ocean, while a low carrying cloud and some heavy rain is moving gradually through Bass Strait. To the forecast now, and tomorrow it should be mostly fine in Cairns and Townsville, clear with a top of 26 degrees in Brisbane. Rain late in the day around Sydney and Canberra. A few showers are forecast for Hobart. Rain should clear from Melbourne and easing showers in Adelaide. Fine with a top of 24 degrees in Perth. Cloud increasing over the centre with overnight storms around Darwin. It's been dismissed as silly as its name, but the Kalamazoo Classic has achieved its aim of putting a tiny South Australian town on the map.
This is a Kalamazoo, used as workers' transport when rails were first laid across the Nullarbor at the turn of the century. But they were never intended for this. Forty teams competed over 500 metres of disused track which runs through Cummins. The law kept an eye on proceedings, but there were no speeding tickets being handed out here. Not that entrants weren't putting in, or perhaps putting it on. Just a bit. A lot of fun, but just what is the point?
It gets people talking about Cummins. There are a lot of people that wouldn't know where Cummins on Eyre Peninsula was previously until the Kalamazoo Classic came to Cummins.
So now you know. For the record, a team called the Gamblers won, their efforts $1,500, and they're going to ask for a place in the Guinness Book of Records. Alan Murrell, 10 News.
And that's all in 10's late news for the moment. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget our next national bulletin at 11:30 in the morning, but stay with us now for all the action in sports tonight with Matthew White. I'm Tracey Spicer. Good night.
Tonight's Late Night News, brought to you by the Hyundai Lantra Runout and MLC, where money matters. Tragedies happen. Triumphs happen. Life happens. 10 News, first at 5, and the late news. News happens on 10 News.
In sports tonight, Sunday, April 19. And the winners are, well, they're from out of town. In the AFL, it's Fremantle. In rugby league, it's Melbourne. Yes, Melbourne again. The losers are the tipsters. Most popular petrol head, Craig Lowndes. He just keeps on winning. And most impressive performance on air, this flip from Arsenal. Stick around for sports tonight. Hello, I'm Matthew White. Welcome to Sports Tonight. For the first time in 4 years, the Australian Rugby League team is at full strength. And that's saying something, given that selectors could find no room for a player of Alan Langer's calibre. He was one of the three main talking points about tonight's team. The others, the captain and the Super League ARL split. Well, here it is. Laurie Daly is the captain, beating Brad Fittler for the job. Of course, Daly was Australian Super League captain last year. There are 6 other Super Leaguers in the team, 7 from the ARL side of the fence. The reserves are split with 2 from each camp. Andrew Johns kept Alan Langer out of the team. It's a politically correct team in a time when stability is a key word in rugby league. One of the toughest jobs facing selectors was the captaincy issue. But if you think the selectors had a hard time, then stop and think about the 2 players involved. Both Daly and Fittler knew they'd be in the team, but 2 captains don't go into one spot. Earlier tonight, I spoke to Brad Fittler. Brad, thanks for your time on Sports Tonight. I guess either way, this captaincy issue was going to be a difficult outcome for you anyway. Was it hard knowing that one of you was going to miss out?
Well, it was always going to happen. They can only pick one captain, and well, at this stage, I'm just really looking forward to playing against New Zealand on Friday night. It's the first time both sides have got back together, and everyone's very keen.
What about you and Laurie? Do you get on well these days? Is everything fine there?
Mate, I've seen him a couple of times this year, and we're as good as mates as we've ever been.
Yeah, the captaincy issue, as I said, it would be tough because the Australian captaincy is something that you don't necessarily really want to give away, do you?
No, it is. It's one of those added bonuses, and it's a great feeling captain your country, and it's a huge honour. Brad,
we all make a pretty big deal about the Super League ARL split. Is it really that much of a deal now between the players?
No, not at all. I think everything's sort of been, everyone's washed their hands of it. I think the form this year's been fantastic. The football's been great. I think it's good to get some of the people back to the game. And, so far it's been a very successful season, I think.
Because either way, this was always going to be, there's, 6 Super Leaguers and 7 ARL players, but you guys don't talk about that amongst each other?
No, they won't be brought up. I think they basically picked the side on form, and they've picked the side that they think is going to beat New Zealand on Friday night. So they can only come up with 17 players. It's a shame they can't pick 30.
Let's talk about one that missed out, Alfie Langer. Did that surprise you with him missing out?
Well, I was surprised. I think Alfie sort of actually played good enough to be in the side, but I think the bloke Andrew Johns has had a fantastic year up to date, and whichever bloke they did play, they both would have done a great job. But yeah, I was surprised Alfie wasn't named in the 17.
Because I read in a paper where Langer said for him it's halfback or nothing, but Jeff Tuvey said he doesn't mind playing hooker or halfback, so I guess the selectors do listen, don't they?
I don't think Alfie'd be real keen to play hooker.
Yeah, he said if he had to stick his head in a scrum again, I don't think he'd be real keen.
He played a couple of games actually. We were in England a couple of years ago, and no, he wasn't wrapped in the idea.
Can we beat the Kiwis, Brad?
Mate, I think we will. I think they picked a pretty good side. It's going to be tough. They're going to have have a lot of home crowd support. So, but I think all the boys are really looking forward to getting this one Australian side back together. And I think the performance they're going to put on Friday will be outstanding because they just so much to look forward to over the past couple of weeks.
And before I let you go, I'll have to get a comment from you about this season so far. 6 rounds down, you've got teams like Melbourne on top of the ladder. Did you ever think it was going to be like that? Because hardly anyone can get anything going in a footy tipping comp.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine how blokes are going in the footy tip. And but it's been excellent, I think, and they've gotten to show that they're not flukes. They've beat Parramatta today. Parramatta, North Queensland, have knocked out Newcastle, who were undefeated up till then. So they're both doing great jobs, and they're just going to show they're not flukes. And they're going to be sides, and I'm sure both of them are going to make the 10.
Might give you a call next week and get your footy tips off you.
Oh no, don't worry about me.
All right, Brad Fittler, thanks very much for your time.
No problem, Matt.
There he is, Brad Fittler. Now, today's game starting with a corker between Parramatta and Melbourne. The lead swapped in this one 5 times before the Storm left Sydney with another tale to tell.
Midfield bomb. The Melbourne Storm, looking to reclaim a slice of the competition lead, took to the Parramatta defence early.
That's the first try of the match.
The Eels striking back through John Simon, the home side slipping into the lead.
And that is why he backed himself.
With teams seemingly matched in attack, concentration went into exerting authority in defence. The lead changed again, the Storm going to the break with a comfortable 10-point buffer.
Kamali goes for a little dart, gets away from Simons. One to beat Kamali. There's Robbie Ross, there's a try.
The Eels began to wriggle out of the deficit. 2 quick tries and the locals were back in the lead.
A try to the Parramatta Eels. Carriage is away. He needs to pop it over the top. No, he doesn't. He'll have a go on his own and he'll score just beside the left upright.
Celebrations, though, were short-lived. Melbourne locking it all up midway through the second half.
Back inside it goes to Carlo. They will go from one end of the field to the other. And John Carlo will score the try.
With 13 minutes remaining, Melbourne's Marcus Bai reached for victory.
Reaches out and Marcus Bai has got it down.
The match had swung for the final time. Rodney Howe securing the win for Melbourne in the dying minutes.
A try to Rodney Howe. John Rebo celebrates.
Points galore in today's games. In fact, tries and more tries. Out of the 5 games, there were 48 tries scored. Norths and Auckland had 11 between them. The Bears won that one because they had 7 of those 11. Souths are back and Canterbury win the try-scoring tally for the day. They scored 9 against the Gold Coast. St George scored enough to beat the Panthers by 6 points. This one at Penrith, the locals furious over a controversial sin binning of Panther captain Steve Carter following a touch judge's report of a high tackle on St George's Mark Coyne. The Saints taking advantage of the extra man, building on a 6-point lead.
Ace goes under the post.
The Panthers staged a late comeback, but it was all too late. The Saints home by 6. Western Suburbs remain on the bottom of the table following a 31-point drubbing from South Sydney.
The Rabbitohs are on fire.
South's 5'8", Julian O'Neill finishing with 20 points, including 8 goals from as many shots, extending his successful run of kicks to 21 now. Now, the record for successful goal kicks in a row in first-class rugby league is still held by the mighty Mick Cronin, who potted 26 on the trot back in 1978. The Rabbits 6 tries to 2, ending a 4-match losing streak. Darryl Halligan was the Bulldogs star today in his 100th game for the club. He scored a club record 28 points against the Gold Coast. And at Bear Park, North Sydney got the backline cranking against Auckland, taking an early 12-0 lead against the Warriors.
For Nigel Rice, superb hands from North Sydney.
But those Kiwis bustled their way back into the game, trailing by 6 points at half-time. But after the break, Norths ran away with it. Captain Jason Taylor with a personal tally of 24 points from 2 tries and 8 goals from as many attempts. So here's the ladder after round 6. Every team has lost at least 1 match now, leaving 5 sides on 10 points. Melbourne in a share for the lead. 4 clubs on 4 wins, while the Bulldogs just scrape into the top 10. In the bottom half of the table, there's a few interesting club names: Canberra, Manly, Illawarra, Cronulla. 3 teams at the tail of the table with just 1 win apiece. And if you thought it was tough on the tipsters in the league, what about the AFL? Upsets in virtually every match. The first at Footy Park in Adelaide, where the Crows and the Power met in Showdown 3. The reigning premiers, obviously the red-hot favourites, but someone forgot to tell Port.
The crosstown rivals refused to give any ground in a predictable tight opening. And Port were far more desperate in the wet than last week.
Brilliantly done by Mead.
The Crows made the early running on the scoreboard, kicking the first 2 goals.
Magnificent.
Gavin Wanganeen tried to lift his side.
Wanganeen knows no fear.
And the Power responded with 2 late goals to trail by 7 points at the break.
Nations kicked the goal.
The arm wrestle continued in the second. Port, with more of the play, pegged one back.
5 metres out, Wanganeen kicks it.
But Darren Jarman, who'd been quiet, popped up with 2 valuable goals.
Gets through, Jarman, here's trouble.
The Power gained a midfield edge to hit the front. Roger James goaling as soon as he came on.
He's got it through.
But Adelaide levelled the scores at half-time.
Made the distance.
Costa displayed great courage.
Look at Costa work.
And then back on his feet, put boot to ball.
Backs it to Costa. Costa.
Similarly, Poole put his hand up as Port lifted late in the term before again hitting the front.
Port in front.
This decision before the siren left the Crows trailing by a point at the final change.
No contact there, I'm afraid.
But Adelaide were more fortunate soon after, kicking the important opening goal of the last quarter. The rain became heavier and Port revelled in it with 3 goals. Donald Dickey holding a strong chest mark and converting. In trying conditions, the Crows just couldn't bridge the gap, Port winning by 9 points.
And the quarter-by-quarter scores show just how tight the match was, the Power proving just too strong in the rain. Another upset looked to be brewing come half-time at the MCG, but a 5-goal third quarter gave the Roos the advantage in that one. While the Dockers won just their 2nd match against Essendon, the Bombers, who had to back up after playing on Monday, trailed all day before losing it by 24 points. And more frustration for Carlton after losing by a point on Monday. The Blues went down by 2 to Melbourne. David Schwartz with 3 for the Demons. And that's where we're at right now. Melbourne and Carlton, a pressure cooker throughout. The Blues' 4-point lead at quarter time was remarkably the biggest margin between the teams at any change. The Demons going into the last quarter with a 1-point lead and hanging on by the skin of their chins for a memorable victory. The win, however, wasn't without a cost. David Neitz likely to miss at least 6 weeks with a broken ankle. At Waverley Park, Fremantle dominated the first half against the Bombers. Sean McManus ensuring the visitors had a 26-point lead at the main break. The third term turned ugly as Essendon fought back, trailing by just 14 at the final change. But the Dockers getting home, James Clement with 5 goals for Fremantle. At the G, North looks set for a walkover. Wayne Carey again strong up front. But the Lions, without a win for the season and under immense pressure this week, fought back through Daniel Bradshaw. The Roos, however, were able to respond to everything Brisbane threw at them. Corey McKernan starring with 5 goals. North Melbourne write them down for a 17-point win. So, to the ladder after 4 completed rounds, and the Bulldogs are sitting pretty on top. Undefeated, the Swans too without a loss. 3 teams with 3 wins, including last year's Wooden Spooners Melbourne. The Eagles, the Dons and Port make up the top 8. The Pies, Tigers and Freo all out of the final 8 by percentage. Last year's premiers Adelaide with just 1 win. 4 points also for the Blues and the Cats. Hawthorn and Brisbane still looking to break their ducks. And that's just about enough footy for now. We'll take a break and come back soon with all of today's motorsports action, both the bikes and the cars. That's coming up, plus the Aussies in the desert. One-day cricket in Sharjah. Stick around.
Wednesday.
I tried to help, but you couldn't.
Well, the police aren't entirely convinced that that's the truth.
A brand new episode.
They're saying you killed him, Mommy.
Says he's innocent.
What do you think?
An all-new mystery on The X-Files, 8:30 Wednesday.
Look, I don't understand why you pay less for health insurance premiums and I pay more.
Well, I've agreed to pay an excess.
Not excess, you pay less.
Yeah, but if I go to hospital, I pay an excess then, so I'd pay less now.
More then and less now.
Yeah, and you pay more now and less then. Understand?
Yeah. More or less.
Medibank Private's excess options are another way to select and save. Join now for immediate cover.
You sure?
I feel better now.
What's your credit card done for you lately? Is it earning its place in your wallet or purse? Well, now there's a credit card that makes your wallet really perform. It's a MasterCard, so you can use it just about everywhere, but at participating Shell service stations, this MasterCard pays you back in Shell petrol, because it's a Shell MasterCard. And your free petrol payback is available every month. Shell MasterCard. It makes your wallet really perform. Call now or pick up an application at participating Shell service stations.
Welcome back to Sports Tonight. An easy win for Australia in their one-day tournament in Sharjah this morning. That's this morning our time. Damien Fleming, the hero with the ball. He had 4 for 28, while Adam Gilchrist found some form with the bat, 57 runs. Ricky Ponting also among the runs. The Aussies home with more than 13 overs to spare against New Zealand. Tonight, Australia meets India. The Aussies are batting first. We've lost a couple of wickets, but we're steaming along at more than 5 runs and over.
A promising start for Australia. Adam Gilchrist sprinting into double figures, but the legs not quick enough for Mark Waugh.
Prasad continuing, and there's that single again. Oh, he's at the stumps. This could be out. I think this is gone.
Waugh, 16, beaten by Anil Kumble's throw. An early let-off for Ricky Ponting.
Put him down. Drop catch.
No such luck for Gilchrist on 25. 2 for 46.
That's out.
In a bid to break the web India's spinners have recently woven, Steve Waugh sent in Tom Moody. The result, a rapid stand with Ricky Ponting. Moody 39 off 35 balls.
Very straight, very hard.
Before Harbhajan Singh replied, 3 for 110.
That's in the air and taken. He doesn't miss many, Mohammad Azharuddin.
Australia, though, still on the way to a sizable total, with Michael Bevan and Ponting looking comfortable.
The bad news is Steve Waugh's just out. We'll update the score for you later. Now, motorsport, and Craig Lowndes has taken round 4 of the Shell Australian Touring Car Championship. With a win and 2 seconds at Phillip Island, Lowndes secured his place as series leader.
In race 1, the start was crucial. And while Dick Johnson's hopes were shattered, Nash and Reid were two-timing. And the Holden racing team was creating double trouble for the rest of the field. Mark Scaife edging out Craig Lowndes for his first win of the year. The pack locked horns in race 2.
This is going to be tight.
And while Scaife wrestled with Russell Ingall for second,
Whoa! Another little tap.
Lowndes was untouchable, claiming the checkered flag.
Craig Lowndes, who will pick up his second win here at Phillip Island.
Slippery conditions claimed many in a dramatic final.
He's coming. Oh, you too.
And despite losing grip and the race to Ingall, Lowndes the overall winner.
Now to the Malaysian 500cc Grand Prix, where world champion Mick Doohan was out to correct his pointless start to the season. Now, if you're waiting to watch the race in full after the show, just give us a minute or so, because here come the highlights and the results.
Doohan had pole for the 51st time in his career, but the start was well won by Japan's Kyoji Namba. Max Biaggi soon grabbed the lead in a first lap full of drama. 3 riders crashed out, Namba the most spectacular. His demise followed a clash with Doohan.
Yeah, it was. It was Mick Doohan rubbed him. Mick Doohan come out of the corner so hard he actually rubbed the rear end of Namba.
The next 20 laps, a game of chase, Biaggi and Doohan. The Australian, desperate for points after mechanical problems, saw him fail to finish the first GP of the season.
John, look how close Doohan is running. He really is. I've not seen him like this in ages, and he is going to...
As Novi Aoki joined the list of crash and burn, Biaggi played the brash young upstart. The Italian won the opening round of the championship in his 500cc debut, but Doohan worked hard to expose his inexperience.
Oh, and again Doohan right in there. Wow.
With 9 laps to go, the 4 times world champion made his move.
You hear the crowd around this track, they are going bonkers. Snuggling it.
From there, a no contest for first place. Carlos Checa grabbing second from Biaggi. Doohan's 47th checkered flag.
To the line, it is Doohan then that takes the second Grand Prix of the year win.
A sporting gesture from Biaggi, a rivalry set for regular exposure on the dais throughout the season.
It was a difficult race. I couldn't get by Max. I felt I had more speed than him, but I basically couldn't get by him anywhere. So I was glad when he started to slow a bit, I could jump on the chance.
And don't forget, Billy Woods and Barry Sheen have all the action right after the show. Now, crunch time in the Ericsson Cup with the first leg of 2 elimination semi-finals played tonight. Wollongong dished out a 3-0 hammering to Adelaide at Brandon Park. Marconi rewarded their capacity crowd with a 1-0 win over Sydney United. 34-year-old veteran Francis Awaratifi's header secured the Stallions' victory.
Alex is out of position and Marconi take the lead.
Despite midfielder Darren McDonald being sent off in the dying stages of the first half, both Adelaide and Sydney United can make amends in next week's return leg. Now, there were 3 games played in the National Basketball League this evening. Canberra kept its playoff chances alive, beating the Suns 88-85. Adelaide thrashed Brisbane 102-86, and Sydney ended its losing streak by the barest of margins, 1 point, in fact. Well, another chapter in the long-running Terry Venables saga has been written, and we'll read it to you after the break. Also, down and out, the Aussies crumble in the Fed Cup tennis tournament. And more soccer, the Gunners on the go. Arsenal set to take the title.
Thursday.
I was acting in self-defense.
Bobby's putting the terror into interrogation.
I think you broke my jaw. That happened running for the door there, Tony. Run for it again.
And caught in the act.
So what's new, Naomi?
All new NYPD Blue, 8:30 Thursday.
What's your credit card done for you lately? Is it earning its place in your wallet or purse? Well, now there's a credit card that makes your wallet really perform. It's a MasterCard, so you can use it just about everywhere.